Hi, my name is Peter. I created PetersTools, which is a bunch of scripts turned into a plugin, and I thought I'd just run through the tools because I think that it's nice to see what they do before you install a plugin. So I'm going to start with the data tools, which are I'm going to start with the timer, which is here. The timer just lets you keep track of time in a project. So when you click on this button, it says starting project timer, and it says the time. If you right click on it, it stops the time. You can open up the time tracking log, which shows the start and stop times on the different times that you've done. You say OK, and you can also click on the total time spent, and it'll add those up. So it's a really simple thing. The data stays in the document, so if you switch documents, the data will be split into multiple parts, but it stays with the document. The next tools are the data tools, which are over here: bill of materials, real material tools, object note tools, dot with data stuff, and some naming tools. I'm going to start with material tools. I'm going to right click here to real material tools in general. There's assign real material, match real material, select objects with no real material, delete real material, and edit real material list. I'm going to say assign real material, and I'm going to pick a couple of my objects here. You can see by default there are some plastics that are in here, and I'll just assign a couple of plastics here to a couple different things. We'll do PPR here. The other thing we can do here is edit the list of materials. You click on this and it brings up a text document, and it's got some instructions here. And then it has a list of materials that are kind of in here by default. These are plastics, like I said. And then some materials to hide that you may not want to throw away, but things that you don't want to show up on your command line every time you click that list. So you can look up the specific gravities of other materials and put them in this list in the same format, and then say File Save, and it will show up here in the Assign Real Materials list. So the next thing we can do, so what happens when you assign a material is it assigns a name and a density only. We can also assign object notes. These are just text that you can apply to an object. So let's say this thing here, we want to add a note that says that it's too tall. And on this one, we'll add a note that says, I don't know, should be square. Don't know why I'm doing that. Okay, now the next thing we can do, so there are other object note tools. These are pretty similar to the material tools, except we don't have a list of notes because that wouldn't really make sense here. The next thing we can do is we can add dots with this data to our objects. So we can click these and select these objects. Click this Add Dot with Data tool, and you can pick any of these things you want to pick. So we can do, let's do real material. So we can see the real materials listed here. I'm going to undo. Let's do that again, but pick weight. Now that's going to use the density and calculate the weight in these units that you pick here. So if you want it in grams, select grams. I'll say OK. So now this one is 633 grams based on this being a closed solid and based on the volume and the density. And you can see other options here: name, layer, real material, weight, volume, object notes. Oh, we should do those too, right? So object notes pop up, so that's that. All this same information and some more can also be exported or copied into a file. So if I click on Bill of Materials, then I get a list of things that I can report into this Bill of Materials document. I'm just going to leave this as it is. Name, real material and weight, box size, notes. Box size is bounding box size. I'm going to say OK. And then again I have to pick the units. Let's say ounces this time, just for so much fun. And it is copied to the clipboard. You can also create a .csv file. And I'm not going to create a CSV file. I'm just going to paste it into a spreadsheet. And then you can see in columns, you can see the data, the weight, the size, and any notes that might be there. So a lot of people like those tools, and those are good. There's also this tool for renaming objects or naming objects one by one. So I find I have a project with a lot of parts. I can click on this and it'll go through them one by one. So I can just name them. And these are good names. And there. And then they all have names, right? So I can do the dot with data and look at name, and you'd see all those names, right? The next tool is, well, there's also select all unnamed objects, which is very useful when you're using that tool. And then there is this tool, which is for modifying names by adding text to the beginning or the end. So if I take these two, I've got all these objects, they've got different names. If I want to add toothpaste to the beginning, I can just do that. And now if I look at the name, it is toothpaste underscore DSFA. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the archive tools, which are here. So this is just a couple of tools that I created when I use, when I want to hide some geometry. I don't want to see everything all the time. Sometimes I use hide, but hide is for things that I just don't want to see for a moment. So I also wanted to create a place to put geometry. I often put geometry in my archive if I am going to put fillets on it, and I, might want to change my mind later. Whatever, I can copy it to an archive or move it to an archive so that I have that data to get back to if I need to. So all this actually does, though, is it actually just creates a layer called archive, and it manages the objects on that layer. So let's just pick these three objects, and I'm going to click archive. You can see the layer called archive appeared, and those objects disappeared. I can unarchive selected. I click that, and it just shows me the things that are in the archive layer by turning it on and turning everything else off. I can select one or more of those, and they come back. In this case, they are grouped because it's more than one object. So yeah, so you hide them, unhide selected, and you get them back. You can also hide a copy. I mean, not hide, sorry, archive a copy. So if I want to archive a copy, I just right click here, and it just sends a copy to my archive layer. That way, if I ever lose this stuff, I can go turn on my archive layer, and it's there. Okay, and before I get to the geometry editing tools, I am going to go through a couple of just miscellaneous tools that I have in here. One is zoom to unlocked. I use lock as just a way to kind of store things sometimes on the screen. So zoom to unlocked, which is here, just zooms to the things that are not locked. Very obvious, very easy. You right click and it does it in all viewports. The next one is details tools. Before I can use details tools, I have to have a detail. So I'm going to click here and say new layout with 4 views. So some of these options in details are change display mode, and what this does is it applies these to all of the detail views. So change display mode, let's say I want them all to be artistic, then I'll change them all to artistic. Change them all to Arctic. Next one is zoom extents. This again just zooms them all in. The third one is make objects same scale. So it has some options, ignore locked objects and scale ortho views. And so you can do those. You right click and it says set model units per layout unit, and by default it's 1. But if you do 0.5 and hit enter, then the objects get very small. You can see it's ignoring the perspective view, which makes sense to me. 0.8, if you want 2, and then you hit escape when it looks right to you. But they are all synchronized and all the same size. Okay, so those are the details tools. The next tools are the geometry editing tools. These are all things that you can do already in Rhino. These are more like shortcuts or short steps to do these things. The first one I'll do is temporary straight line trim, and this usually is better in an orthographic view, as trim usually is. And it really just automates the line option in trim. So you can just do this kind of thing. The other option here is doing it at 0. Often if you want to cut something in half and it's a symmetrical part, that can be useful. The next tool here is going to be, let me turn this stuff off, is split both. So split both, okay, what do I have on still? All right. Okay, split both lets you split both sets of parts. So I'm going to start by selecting one set of parts, and I'm going to hit split both. Then I'm going to hit the other part or parts. And now I've actually split out all the bits of this. And so this can be useful, especially if you don't know why a Boolean's not working, or if you don't want to deal with flipping normals and all that stuff before you do that kind of stuff. And it's a useful trimming tool. The next tool is connect two curves. And archive all that. Connect two curves. This is very simple. Obviously, if you have these two curves and you select them, you collect this, connect this, and there's a bug. And it will connect the closest ends. In some cases that does weird things, but in this case, you know, it's always the closest two ends of the two curves. The next tool is called Quick Cage. I use this a lot. It is a way to create a cage really quickly with the same number of control points in all three axes, and you can choose how many points it is. So by default it's 4. You can click on any other number here, or you can type in your own number, and we'll just do 8, and we'll pick these two objects, and so it's very quick. So this is useful especially if you are doing a lot of sculpture. You can do things really quickly this way. You don't have to go through the menu or all the command line options each time for each little thing that you want to do. The next one is flatten. This tool, so this curve is funky in 3D space. If you want this to be flattened in the z-axis to the ground, basically, right click on Z and it is flattened on the ground. Or you could do, you know, Y, and you could do it like that. Also, Y direction to 0 brings it to the 0, 0. The next tool is called Magic Cap. Magic Cap, you can select a bunch of kinds of input. Open curves, open surface edges, or closed curves or closed surface edges, and then you click Cap, and it creates a flat planar surface with all of those. The last tool is Hiding Curves and Points tool. This just hides all of the non-selected curves, so, and non-locked. This curve is locked over here. This one is selected. If I click on Hide All Unselected Curves, it's going to hide those too. Points, I'm just going to right click and it hides all of them. The reason I made it so that selected doesn't disappear is so that if there are a few things you don't want to hide, then you can keep them by just selecting them. I think that's it. Thank you for watching.